Hello, everybody. Welcome to IST 110. I'm, of course, Professor S, and this is today's lecture. Anyways, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to go over a little bit more with Office applications. I'm going to talk more about the group project because you got peer evaluations now due, and then we'll talk about the next step with the tiny project. So when we're talking about presentation software, it could mean a lot of different things, and it kind of depends upon what your attendant audience is, what you're trying to do with it. Like, there's lots of things to consider. So first of all, let's talk about the easy, obvious ones: PowerPoint and Google Slides. The design of these is centered around an old projector, and I have that right here. If you notice the way that you probably aren't as familiar with these because I don't know if you've ever seen these before, but the way that this works is this is called a carousel, a slide carousel. And the individual slides, they're like squares that have the actual slide in here. And what they are is that like that image, what I have in red, is the light shines through it and goes onto a screen. But the idea is, it's like each slide is a different thing, and it works very much like PowerPoint and Google Slides does, except they've also probably added animation in there too, which is not something you could do with these animations. Just think slide, next slide, next slide, next slide. That's what this does. And so, anyways, that's like the format for these. But there's other formats. So, like for instance, Microsoft Sway has more of an individual thing. And so that's kind of like more of a scrolling down for the individual. So like for instance, PowerPoint, Google Slides, those would make more sense for a group of people. So like for instance, I use I use PowerPoint to I use PowerPoint for this my slides here. Like that's what I use here, and it's for multiple people to enjoy. I'm not scrolling through Sway because it's not something that you're reading along as we go along, or using Adobe Spark, which is a different sort of thing. That's more of a web-based thing. But the idea is like considering my audience, which is students watching either a video or coming to my Zoom classes, this makes the most sense. Another way is Whiteboard and Google Jamboard. And the interesting thing about these are interactive presentation software. This is for if you want somebody to, like if I wanted to ask somebody to solve a problem or write their name or something like that, to like kind of do a quick poll or something. Like it's a more interactive presentation. I mean, that doesn't make as much sense right now for a video that I'm making for you, so that wouldn't make as much sense, but it's something that's an option. Another one that's kind of like weird, but I guess it qualifies as a presentation software, is Adobe XD. And Adobe XD is designed for app prototypes. The idea behind it is that you are presenting your app idea. So if somebody has the idea of coming up with an app, instead of having to program the whole thing to pitch it to people to invest in it or something like that, sometimes it makes more sense to come up with a prototype that's like a bunch of that presents how the app will function without actually coming up with the programming behind it. So kind of giving them a taste. And I mean, there's button links and stuff like that, but the idea is it's presentation software, so that they can maybe communicate to the rest of the organization as to like what's going to happen next. Maybe it's to communicate to investors to invest in money so they can get a programmer to program the software. There's lots of different reasons why it would be a good idea, but it's something that's available. Another thing that would, I guess, technically work as video editing software that you actually have access to, and you do have access to Adobe XD if you didn't know, is Adobe Premiere Pro and Premiere Rush. Now, Premiere Pro is video editing software that the pros use, like willing to bet lots of movies that you watch, that's probably with Premiere Pro. There's lots of YouTubers that use Premiere Pro. Premiere Rush is more consumer friendly. It's less pro, more consumer friendly. The idea is like the barrier to entry. Premiere Pro is kind of intense. You have to have a more powerful computer than the one I'm using right now. And it's kind of takes a little bit of getting used to, because the idea is that there's more that you can do with it. But if you're just doing simple cuts and stuff like that, Premiere Rush makes the most sense. But I mean, also thanks to the beauty of the internet, there's lots that can be learned from Premiere or YouTube to do Premiere Pro. And then also in a way, Zoom kind of is, because I mean that's how I presented the information to the class originally. I don't know. Anyways, another important Office application is Outlook and the like. So Outlook, you originally probably thought of it as a thing to send emails, but it's a little bit more than that. So one of the things that it also does is keeps tasks. So it's to-do lists that can be to determine priorities, provide reminders when you want to complete them, those sort of things. And these can be tied to OneNote. There's other things that could be tied to tasks like Microsoft Planner can. I'm willing to bet Microsoft Project can be tied to it as well. But it helps with to-do lists and things to be done and communicate things that need to be done. Another important feature, and this is one that I use a lot, is the calendar. So keeping track of scheduling meetings. So like when I have office hours, that if you can't come in during my normal time, you can arrange a time, and that's through Microsoft Bookings, which works with my Outlook to schedule an appropriate time that I'm not already busy. Okay. So when we're talking about restarting from the beginning. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is compression algorithms. So when we're talking about compression algorithms, the idea is imagine that you're trying to send somebody information, right? And that you're trying to fit it into a box. And so like what compression algorithms do is it allows the items to kind of fit in that box better. It changes the size of it. Right. And so what lossless will do, we'll kind of think about like if you're like have the things in a box, it will rearrange things so that when you unpack it out of the box, you can put it together. Right. And you don't lose anything. The what lossy is it might remove a couple things that you don't really need so that it fits better in the box and it can actually get even smaller. So here's some examples. So an example of lossy is JPEG. So JPEG is designed so that it gets a little, so it gets much smaller, so it doesn't take up as much room. And so it's often used when it's storing a bunch of stuff that you're like able to, like you don't really need such a big file when you're trying to save space. Whereas PNG files, these use some lossless compression to kind of preserve the file. So oftentimes PNG files will be bigger than JPEG files of the same thing because there's more compression that happens because JPEG's getting rid of information. With audio, WAV files are actually uncompressed data. An example of a lossless would be FLAC files, but really the more popular ones are MP3s, which is lossy. MP3 files were designed. I mean, like your ear. The thought is like your ears can only hear so much, so the idea is like you can fit more songs on a device or a CD with MP3s. And so that might be one of the reasons why someone might go with more MP3s. And that's actually turn of the century why MP3s became so popular, because storage was a little bit more expensive back then. When we're talking about video files, we have MP4s, and that, I mean, like there's other video formats, but these are all going to be lossy formats. Lossless is not something that really applies to video because there's a lot going on. It's more than just images and audio because it's combining a bunch of images and audio together. So it's oftentimes uses a lossy algorithm. So MP4 is an example of a lossy algorithm. All right, so when we're talking about collaboration tools, what we're talking about is different things that allow people to work together. So one of the things is Box. I'm not sure actually how much longer we're going to have Box at Penn State, but it's an option now. And what Box is it's a online it's a cloud storage place for people to store files, and they can share directories so that different people can work together on a project. And that's kind of where a lot of directions have gone so far for our group projects. Another possibility is Microsoft Teams. So Microsoft Teams is a wonderful software that allows people to have meetings together, chat with each other, and even share files if they need to with each other. And it has some other features as well, but that's a lot of the important ones. Microsoft Project is a piece of software that like bigger organizations might have to kind of communicate the different things that need to be done. They can make these things called Gantt charts. They can determine, like they can communicate, people can communicate what thing they're working on right now. And where they are in that thing so that you don't have multiple people working on the same thing at once. It helps with the efficiency of a project. And another thing that like kind of you can do some of that with is in Microsoft Planner. So you do have access to Microsoft Planner, and a lot of those things. So you can organize a project based upon the different tasks that you have. And then you can assign them to different people in the group, and they can communicate where they are in doing it. The only thing is, it's like people have to communicate that they're working on it, or they have to use it in order for it to be effective. All right, so let's talk about the group project. So before class today, you had the group contract and the MOU due. The next step is the peer evaluations. You have 24 hours to complete it from when class ended, and the grade is not just if you turn in the peer evaluations. It's like other things too, and I have it broken down over here. So turning it in on time makes up 50% of your grade. Then 5% is how you score yourself, and 45% is on score from others. Now, don't be surprised if you don't get full 100 points for this. This is you're not like people aren't. I'm not setting people up to fail, but it's not really designed for people to get hundreds on it, and it's okay. It's just the way that this works. Like in order to get 100, you have to everybody has to rate you really high that you did the work. So if you want to do really high, you have to do a lot. You have to put in the work. Anyways, what I want to make sure people do is that make sure you enter student's ID. And again, what that is the email without the psu.edu. So for example, if somebody was saying that I was in their group, they would say my Penn State ID is KXS456 because my Penn State email is KXS456@psu.edu. So not this. This is what I want for this, okay? And then also make sure you answer everything about the student. So make sure you say how well they communicated, how hard they worked on the project, all that sort of thing. And actually, just as a heads up, if you're not doing these things, you will get points taken off. The first peer evaluation will be graded soon. I'm sorry for the delay. There's just lots going on all at once. But the idea is that there's 150 students in this class. I need everybody to make sure that they follow directions, and there needs to be a consequence for not, because this is very tedious on my end to make sure that this works. And so all you have to do is make sure you put in their correct ID it helps me link everything together. And if you have trouble finding it, like you forgot to ask your peers about it, you can look it up at the Penn State directory. Go to psu.edu, look up directory, and you'll be able to look up anybody's name. Okay? And again, that's due within 24 hours. All right, anyways, tiny project. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're taking the data from your survey and putting it in Excel. And to help with that, I have if, sum, count, max, min, length, and count if and count s. I am going to do a walkthrough using all these except for this one. This isn't going to be used. This is going to be, what that does is that says how large a cell is. Like, for instance, if the cell says happy, it would count the characters in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's a length of the cell that says happy would be 5. Okay. Anyways, count if and count if s, those are conditional statements that will count if something satisfies those conditions. And we'll use that in just a second. And so just as a repeat, you're going to take that data. I recommend copying and pasting it in Excel and then making sure that you have at least 2 columns worth of data so that you can make charts later. So we'll be looking for 2 columns worth of data that has been manipulated from your table in some way. Okay? So there has to be some sort of manipulation, looking for 2 columns. Those 2 columns have to be different. And then the next step is we're going to be presenting. Okay, so now let's kind of look at what this looks like. So when you have your survey open, what you're going to do is if you go to responses, and it gives you some information. You want to open it in Excel. Save the file. Sure. All right, so now that we're looking at this in Excel, the couple of things that I want to kind of point out is that this makes a table, and it can be useful, but what I'd recommend doing is copying and pasting it because I think it's easier to work with it, like do the things that I'm talking about as not a table. So if you copy it and you could just click whatever cell that you want to do and do right click and paste values, it's going to make things a little bit easier. Okay. Like this changes the things, but the important thing then you also want to try to get rid of some of these columns too, maybe. Shift cells left. There you go. Get rid of these ones that I don't need anymore. They're empty, so. Now, these don't contain this is not enough to say, like, this is not enough to be done. So we don't have I have a column here and I have a column here, but I want to see you do 2 columns that you're calculating, that you're using the formulas to do something with. And we'll go over that in just a second. Let me open up a different spreadsheet to work with it. But you'll want to work with this information, and you're submitting a spreadsheet for the assignment. Let me open that up. All right, so here I have a spreadsheet that I can manipulate to show you some basic functions and formulas to using Excel. So when we use formulas to make calculations, and Excel has these predefined things that can help us make these or do these calculations. And in order to do a formula, we do equals, and then we can go from there. So like, for instance, I can add some things up. So I can select this cell here and do plus, and do this cell here and equals, and it adds those two cells together. But if I want to do the whole cell to the whole list of cells together, what I need to do is I do equals, and I can use the function sum. Open parentheses, and then we can select the first one, comma, next one, comma, next one, comma, next one, comma, next one, and we can keep on doing that for the rest of the list. And then when I do close parentheses, if I did that for the whole list, it would add all those different cells together. But there's got to be a better way, and there is, and that's by doing a range of things. So let me do the sum of this list right here. So do sum and do the list right here. And so notice what I did was I just clicked and dragged. Another thing you could do is just type C2 to C20, and you could see with this box what is being covered. Do close parentheses and enter, and this is the sum of this range right here. Another function that's useful is maximum, and I kind of want to show you what we could do with max. And so what I'm going to do is find the range. I'm going to find the max right here. And close parentheses, so it's going to be that range right there. And when we select it, notice what happens when I click on this box right here and I drag, or click on this corner right here with this dot, and I drag to the right. Notice it's different. Let's look at what it's doing. So when we click on it, notice that when we dragged it to the right, it found the max of the next column over. I'll do enter. Now look what happens when I drag it down. It's still different. Notice it includes a 342 because this is what it's doing. So look what when we, let me look right here. So notice when we dragged it down, it shifted that range down too. But what we want to do is we want to use a different one. So I want to find the min. So I'm going to switch to min here and do find the minimum here, but I want to find it of a different range. I want to find it of the range from here to here. And I'll just do enter. Now I want to, let's say I want to find the min when I drag down of that same range. And so what I can do is if I use the dollar signs here, it will like just look at from this row to this row, and when I move down in calculation, well here you'll see. So notice I select this and I click on this column here and I drag down, and notice it's going to be the same value because it's referring to the same rows. Another thing that we can do is we can do special sum. So, or we can calculate a special sum. So I'm going to use the if function. So if function, the way if function works is, notice it says that it does logical test and then if it's true and if it's false. So what I want to do is if the two values are the same in the row, then I want to add them together. And if not, I don't want it to display anything. So what I'll do is I'll say, all right, if this cell equals this cell, then I want to add them together. So I'll just do this plus this. And then if not, I want it to display nothing. So I'll just say this, or I could just leave it blank, right? So close parentheses here. And so notice they're not the same, so it's blank. And so I'm going to click and drag it. And notice that right here, it's says 32 because these two values are the same. I'm going to change this because instead of just doing equals, I want it to be greater than. Okay, so if it's greater than, if the first column is greater than the second one, then I want to add them together. Otherwise, I want to leave it blank. So now I'm going to click this and drag it to apply to this whole range right here. And notice there's significantly more sums together because at this point, this one's greater than this one's greater than this one, and so on and so forth. All right, so if things look a little different, I had to pause my recording and come back to it. Anyways, the next thing that, the next function to show is count. So if we do count, look what happens when we do this in parentheses. So we're going to count these. Notice it says 0. However, if we were to change the range to be right here, notice 19. So the thing is that it counts numbers. So something that could be good. The next function that we're going to use, and this is probably going to be very useful for you, is the COUNTIF function. So if we do COUNTIF, and so I'm going to do for this this range here. So we select a range, and notice it says range and criteria. Okay. So we have the range here, and then the criteria is that it equals this. So I'm just going to select this cell right here, close parentheses, and enter. And it counts 6. And we keep on going here, and notice it's 8, 4, 5. And if you look at these different letters, it's going to, what it's doing is it's counting all the values in that range that satisfy this value that are here. The only thing is, I think I dragged it down. Oops. Let's look at what this is. 3 through, okay, yeah. So if you notice it, like I dragged it down and it went, the range moved. So what I need to do is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the $ before the row values. That's what the numbers are, rows. So that when I do this select and move down, it's going to count. So notice here, we'll go to this one right here. So notice this value moved down, but this range stayed the same. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're counting all the rows, or everything in here, all the A's, all the B's, all the C's, all the D's. Okay? The last one that I want to show you is COUNTIF-S. So we have open parentheses, and the idea with this is it's saying, all right, look at all the stuff from the range that satisfies this condition, and then all of those things that satisfy that one condition, we're going to look with another column that satisfies that condition too, or satisfies a different condition, and go from there. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, all right, what are all the everything in the first column that has an A, count how many how many of the A's it has of the, well, no, we'll just do duplicates, is like what it says. So all the ones that have both A's in them, all the ones that have both B's, and so on and so forth. So we'll do all the ones that have both A's. So we'll use this range right here. And since we're going to be dragging it down, I'm going to put a $ before the numbers. And then we want it to look for A, so this value right here, comma, and then we want to look at all the things in this range. So it's going to be in this $, this $, and then comma, and then we also want it to look for A's as well. And then close parentheses. And so now it's going to look for everything that has an A first in this column, and then if it does, it's going to check to see if there's an A next to it, and if there is, it's going to count it. And if we drag this down, what it's doing is it's looking at if there's a B here, does it have a B next to it? And if it does, it counts it. Now, if we want to change it a little bit, and we want it to stay on A. So if the first letter is A, how many A's are there? How many B's are there? How many C's are there? And how many D's are there? What we could do is we could go in here and we could put the $ next to the 10, right? And so notice that when we drag this down, Now what we do here is we're looking at all the A's here, and it says, all right, of all the A's in this column here, we're saying how many are A, B, C, and D. And notice here we counted how many A's there were, and there's 6. And notice that there's the letters next to it, there's 2 of them are A's and 4 of them are B's. Let's kind of change this up a little bit just to, change things. And instead of doing M10, what I'm going to do is, let's do B. And so we're going to make a $sign for that one, or to pick that one. So we select it and draw it down. And notice that we have 2, 3, and 3. So that is 8. And notice we had counted 8 B's before. And so again, this is counting how many letters are next to it of A, B, C, and D. Okay? And that's really all the functions that I covered. One other thing that might be helpful is that you can, if it's necessary, if you need the extra help, if you do the function thing and search for any of the ones that we went through, it can help find, help set it up for you. Like for instance, if we do count if s, not seeing it right here. So what we can do is we could do equals count if s, and we could say, all right, go here, and let's see, it didn't come up. Well, anyways, what we could do is we could do all, and it will be in here. Count if s, right here, right? And so it gives the description for what's the different choices that are needed to do this. And if we click OK, notice that it says the criteria. And so if you go into this criteria, you can actively select the different rows. So I want to use this range first, and then we do this button right here. And then for criteria 1, I want it to be A. And then here it's saying a range. So we select the range that we want here. And this button again, and then it's saying, all right, what's the value we want? A again. And then we could keep on going for different ranges, but I don't want to. I think that's good. And we click OK. And it doesn't. Look, it added this plus. We don't need that. So I'm gonna get rid of that. And there it's counting all the ones that are both A's. Don't believe me? Let's change this back to 0. And notice that that's the same value down here. Hopefully that helps you. Anyways, I'll see you all on Wednesday. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please press the like button. It lets me know I'm doing something right. If you have any questions about any of the content, please send an email through Canvas to both me and the rest of the teaching team, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Do not send it through normal email. You will not get as fast response. If you have any suggestions for how I can make these videos better, please leave in the comments below. Don't forget to roundhouse kick the subscribe button and ring the bell to get notified for when I post the next video. Anyway, I think that's good for now, and I will see you all next class.